Welcome to the Hard Skills Show, where we discuss how to develop the most challenging soft skills required to navigate today's leadership complexities and tomorrow's unknowns. I'm your host, Dr. Mira Brancu. Why do we have such a difficult time working and getting along with other people? Why do we experience so many misunderstandings? Our guest today will share with us the top ways to minimize most misunderstandings. And it's a great topic for season 6, which is focused on positive workplace politics in honor of my new workbook, Millennials Workbook for Navigating Workplace Politics. So let me introduce our guest to you. R. Carl Heibenstreit is a certified executive coach, leadership, team organizational development consultant, and international speaker with over 25 years of experience coaching leaders and their teams to work better together and consistently exceed their organizational goals. He holds a PhD in organizational psychology and has authored 3 books. The most recent, and the one we're focusing on today, is Explicit Expectations, the Essential Guide and Toolkit of Management Fundamentals. It's a great book. I had a chance to read through it, so we're going to go through it today. Welcome, and great to have you on the show, Carl.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. So, how did you get into this particular topic? I'm sure you were seeing a lot of conflict all around you in organizational psychology, but I'm really curious, how did you get to this sort of explicit expectations idea and interest in it?
So there's a more recent reason I created the book, and a very old way that actually was the impetus for starting thinking about things in a different way. So when I was in my early 20s, I was working at AT&T, and I was in a very, very mature role for my age, and I had to go and present at the Society for Human Resource Management about this wonderful concept called Talent Alliance. So I went there, and there were 2 back-to-back sessions at the Society for Human Resource Management conference, and I was all excited. I was all ready to go. I had my presentation, I had the technology going, everything was all set. Went in, started everything, and people started leaving. People just got up one after the other, and they started leaving the room. And I was devastated. It was, yeah,
it's everybody's nightmare.
and it happened to me. It happened to me. And I realized that people were not there for the same reason I thought that they were there. I was there to present to them this wonderful solution to all of their problems and get them to understand the system and hopefully buy into it. And they were there like, no, I don't want a sales demo. I'm out of here. And I was in my early 20s, and I was, again, just devastated. Luckily, I had an immediate opportunity to turn this around because I had another workshop right after it. So I decided I need to approach this from a different perspective, and I need to set the expectations up front, find out what they're here to hear about, and also what I can do to help them to address those needs. So that's where the initial understanding or the light went off that,
first of all, Carl, what a pivot you made. That's a very impressive pivot. Like the realization and the adjustment made such a difference.
Well, I was fortunate that I had that second chance right then and there. Other people could have had to wait a year or, until the next conference, or if they would even allow them back to try to make that change. So I was just fortunate to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And since then, whenever I've done a workshop or meet up with people, the first thing I want to do is I find out, what is your expectation of what we're going to do today at this workshop, at this coaching session, whatever it is, because I need to know that we're on the same page. Can I deliver on that expectation? And if I can't, I need to let them know what they can expect of me, right? So that was the very first introduction to the fact that, hey, not everyone is necessarily thinking about things the same way that I do and wanting the things that I do. And by the way, that's very much golden rule. Well, the golden rule is really treat others the way that you want to be treated. So I was thinking that this is what I would have wanted if I were to show up to this workshop. And it wasn't what they wanted. So that's the pivot to the platinum rule. Treat others the way that they want to be treated. Find out what their expectations are and see if you can meet them. So the latest iteration of how this book came about was I was asked to create a some sort of reference guide or toolkit for a startup that had all these individual contributors who were being promoted into management roles now that the company was getting bigger and growing. And of course, they didn't have any knowledge, any background, any experience in being supervisors or managers. It was their first time doing so. And they needed some sort of support and help that the organization was not able to offer in any other way. So I created a smaller version of what the book is, specific to their needs and what they were looking for, and realized that there's more I wanted to put in here. And this project is not what is letting me do so, but let me expand on that. So I took that work, I expanded it, and I created the book because this is really a way for people who are thrust into a supervisory or leadership role for the first time, or even may have years of experience managing and leading others, but have never really had formal training in it. And there's, by the way, there's lots of research that shows that our managers have not received enough training to do so, and they feel that they actually report that they don't receive any training to do so. So this is a way to address that, to really show people this is the expectation that of you as a leader, as a manager now. And it's a two-way street. It's you need to figure out what the organization and what your manager expects of you, but you also need to figure out what your direct reports expect of you. And then you need to let them know what to expect of you as well, what your expectations are as well. So
Yeah, so
it's,
critical. And it doesn't, I mean, it seems obvious,
yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily come naturally to start a conversation, a discussion in this way, a relationship, right?
no.
And before we get into your framework, um, what are the kind of applications that this has? What are the common
Mm.
conflicts that you see that you find your framework works really well for?
It really works for every type of conflict that you would have in an organization, from a conflict in, hey, I'm coming into this job, you recruited me, you interviewed me, this is what I was expecting, and the reality that I'm getting is not what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm,
Well, what were
mm-hmm.
your, ask the right questions in the interview, and hopefully that everyone's going
Yeah.
to be honest with you, and really give you the true picture, the realistic job preview of what's really the culture is like and the company's like and the expectations for the role are like, to once you're there and there and saying, I joined this job and I want your job within 6 months or a year. That's not going to happen. But those expectations need to be explicit. So the manager can say, that's not going to happen. Now we can grow you, we can give you development experiences, we can provide, maybe you can mentor people, maybe you could, whatever it is to help them grow to eventually get into a higher level role if that's what they're really looking for. But really, it's also figuring out what are you looking for in this quote unquote promotion? Is it more money? Is it more responsibility? Is it managing others? Is it the job title? We can probably meet those needs if it's not, I want your job in 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I could imagine a million applications. I'm also resonating with like just from the very beginning when you're doing a job search. I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many times, I've had conversations with people who are looking at negotiating salary, location,
Hmm.
hybrid versus remote, all of these like
Hmm.
logistical things.
Right.
And then, I say, how do you know this is the right environment for you?
Hmm. Exactly.
And it you know a lot of our kind of satisfaction has to do with those subtle quiet assumptions, hopes, dreams, aspirations that we never explicitly
Vocalize.
reveal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I see it also play out even when you're on a project, even when you're in a team and you have expectations. Oh, I expect my team members to behave a certain way. Have we had this conversation? Are there explicit rules of engagement? Have we all gotten together and said, this is how we will work together? Or these are my hot buttons. These are my pet peeves. This is what I like to, this is how I like to be communicated with. This is how I like to receive feedback. This is how I like to receive recognition. These can be different for every single person on the team. And a manager needs to learn how to navigate that. Otherwise, they're going to be, instead of thinking that they're engaging people and they're doing the right thing, they may have the best intentions, but the reality is they may be disengaging them.
Yeah, absolutely. um you know I've had situations where a team, most teams do this, but a team has skipped over that entire process of
Mm-hmm.
discussing their expectations, each individual pet peeves,
Mm-hmm.
hopes, dreams, concerns,
Yeah.
style of communicating, how they want to manage conflict, all of those things. And you could have a team that's been working for 20 years together and have
Mm-hmm.
never done that. And
Yeah.
um, when they have tension, when they fall apart, you know, just engaging in those explicit expectation
Right.
discussions makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Figuring out where they're coming from. What worldview do you have? What perspective are you taking on this? And realizing that they're not out to get you. They just may be looking at things from a different lens. That's really what it is. And by the way, wouldn't it be great if you could also take on that lens? Because that's going to expand your own worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Mhm.
in your book, you state a very clear perspective. I'm going to read it right now.
Mhm.
Not knowing what is expected of you is the root cause of confusion, disappointment,
Mhm.
disengagement, and failure in organizations.
Yes.
And in your book, you are able to apply it to like literally every critical leadership activity: strategic
Yes.
planning, organizational design, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion,
Mhm.
recruiting, interviewing, hiring, prioritization, delegation, empowerment,
Yeah.
terminations, meetings. I mean, all of the things that most leaders um, have challenges with,
Right.
right? You can apply that pretty much. So, um, tell me more about um, why is it the root cause, and especially
Mm.
around disengagement.
Yeah.
Especially curious about the disengagement and the failure.
Right.
Um, why is it sort of the root cause of those things?
I think people don't generally go out in the morning and say, I'm going to create chaos. I'm going to create confusion. I'm just going to hurt people by misunderstanding them and creating nebulous situations where people don't understand each other and create conflict. They go generally out looking at the world the way that the world makes sense to them. And again, golden rule, treating the world the way that they'd want to be treated. And the reality is other people don't want to be treated that way. They don't look at the world through the
Mm,
same lens. They don't have the same values. They don't have the necessarily the same principles or ideologies that they're looking at that make the world make sense to them.
yeah.
And so there's that immediate conflict. So no expectations are shared. And people are thinking that the other person is sharing their same worldview and their same perspective, but they never have the conversation. So that's why the conflict happens, because people aren't clear. They're almost like expecting people to read their minds. And I don't know any mind readers. I don't know if you know any mind readers out there, and that you know exactly what the other person is needing or thinking, or what their values are, what their motivations are, what their aspirations and dreams are. So these are all implicit. And people think that, well, these people should know. I mean, they know me, or we're teammates. We've been working together for X amount of time, but it's never made explicit. And until it's made explicit, we don't really know. And that's where the conflict always arises in every single aspect of
Yeah.
the workforce
Yeah. And,
and even at home.
yeah, I mean, I
Mhm.
just think about like the disengagement piece.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about myself, and it's invalidating
Mhm.
when someone says they hear something different than what I just said or intended, right? Or
Yeah.
when someone, um, has gotten to know me a little bit and then, um, says something, does something that is so different
Mhm.
than what I've been saying all along is a value of mine or an interest
Right.
of mine, and yes, in our personal lives too, like
Mhm.
when my spouse, brings home, I don't know, earrings, and I said, I don't like earrings and I don't wear earrings.
I don't even have pierced ears, right? Where did this come from?
It's not like he's trying so hard, right?
Hmm. Yep.
People try to offer what they think someone else
Exactly.
needs, but this
Hmm.
is the crux of what you're saying: is that's the golden rule, right?
Hmm.
And the platinum rule is trying to listen carefully enough or pay attention enough to know, but what is it that they need from me?
Right.
How should I show up for them in particular? So we are
Yeah.
reaching an ad break. I would love to get into how do you sort of shift that
Yeah,
mindset? What are some sort of tips and tricks that you have for that? You're
perfect.
listening to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Carl Hebenstreit, author of Explicit Expectations. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. At that time, you can find us live streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, and several other locations at talkradio.nyc. And if you'd like to ask us questions right now in real time and you're listening in real time, send us the questions. We'll answer. Otherwise, we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guests today are Carl Hebenstreit. And we're talking about his new book, Explicit Expectations. And part of Explicit Expectations, first rule, switch from the golden rule to the platinum rule. Switch the mindset. So we've been talking about that. How do you make that shift?
It's difficult. It's really difficult because all of our lives we've been taught the golden rule. Everyone talks about the golden rule, how we even think about gold as being this level of standard that is the highest possible. It's expensive, it's sought after, it's plating Capitol buildings. It's just, it's like we have all these different things about the golden ticket, golden parachutes, the golden girls. It's just
That's
maybe
true.
not the golden girls, but everything. It's amazing. It's the gold is just what we should be looking for. And then we all know that the golden rule is treat others the way that you want to be treated. Even hotels are going around and they're having that as their advertising campaign. We treat you the way that we'd want to be treated. And the reality is, even if we just use the hotel as an example, not everyone's going to want to go to that hotel. Some people want to go camping. Some people want to use an RV. Some people, it's just, that's not going to apply to everyone.
Yeah.
So it becomes very central, very, very me focused, very egocentric, if you want to look at it that way. And it doesn't take into consideration the fact that there are differences. Now, the golden rule would absolutely work if every single person was exactly the same way, from exactly the same background, with exactly the same needs, same abilities, same history, same likes, same dislikes, same allergies, same ideology, same politics. And I'm not sure, is the world that way?
No,
No.
it's not. And let me just interject here because I'm having like a realization about how selfish the golden rule is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's
It's very
selfish.
self-centered. It's very
Yeah.
egocentric. So
Yeah.
it's very me-focused. And if we look at Daniel Goleman's work with basically emotional intelligence building, that's the first step. Being selfish or self-aware. Like, what do I think?
Yeah.
What do I think in this situation? Like,
Yeah.
what are my needs? This is how I show up, right? The
Mm-hmm.
next step in emotional intelligence building is empathy towards others, empathy for others and their different perspectives and situations. That takes us to the platinum rule. So treat others the way they want to be treated. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the only way to figure that out is to talk to them. So we have to talk to people. We have to have relationships with them. We have to ask them. We have to have discourse and really figure out what is it that makes them tick? What's important to them? What are their values? How do they think about things? What are their feeling styles, their thinking styles, their action styles? All these different things. So then we have golden rule, self-awareness. Platinum rule, empathy. The next step in Daniel Goleman's work is do something with it, integrate it. So it's great to have the knowledge that this other way of thinking exists, or this other worldview or perspective exists. And guess what? It's equally valid to your own. So if we still stay stuck in golden rule, we're going to think our way is the best. There is no other way. With empathy, we start seeing other ways and realizing, oh, there are other ways of thinking about things. And oh, wow, I guess they do make sense if you think about them. Third step, now we're going to go call it the rhodium rule.
Ooh.
How do we integrate that new perspective, that new knowledge, that new worldview into our own to have more of a growth mindset, expand our mindset and our worldview so that we truly do see the world the way that it is, as opposed to just the way that we are.
Yeah. Rhodium. I actually, when I read your book, I actually had to look it up. I was like, what's rhodium? Did you come up with that? Where did you come up?
I did. I looked at it and I said, okay,
Nice.
gold expensive, whatever, right? Yeah. Platinum more expensive. Is there something that's even more expensive than platinum? And rhodium is within the platinum family and it's the most expensive platinum. So I'm like, okay, let's go with that.
Nice.
And then so someone was asking me how to spell it recently, and it's RHODIUM, and I'm like, like my first initial for right, and H is in my last name, and nice. OD as in what I do, organization development.
Nice.
Then you add IUM.
Okay, that's perfect. I love it. I love it. So yeah, I really love this idea of first you go inward, which is what a lot of coaches do, is focus on that self-awareness.
Yes.
And then you go outward and you focus on learning kind of how somebody else is experiencing, in their perspective. Mm-hmm. But this sort of like integration in order to have a larger perspective is so critical for leaders to be able to step back, take in lots of different perspectives, and then sort of like try to decide what to do with that. So exactly. I really like that a lot. So now let's get into sort of specifics. Mm-hmm. In your book, you have these 7 C's of explicit expectations. You have these kind of 5 effective practices that you apply to all of these different ways of engaging as a leader. I'd love for you to spend a little time sharing with our audience, what are those 7 C's, how to think about them, how to apply to effective leadership practices.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the 7 C's were basically a response to the fact that we are living in very, very challenging times. So I don't know if people used to be calling it VUCA, times of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And then the new term that's been expanded from that is BANI. So brittle, which challenges our assumption that of strength, that the world is strength and it'll all work out and it'll be strong and resilient. And the reality is it's very brittle, especially right now, it's very brittle. The A would be for times of anxiety, right? So the anxiety is because we have an illusion that we do have control over many things, and we're seeing more so that the control doesn't exist, right? We can control some things, but we can't control as many things as we'd want to control. So there's an anxiety that results from that. Nonlinear, the N is for nonlinear. So nonlinear is that we're hoping to make things predictable and create systems and models that predict things. And the reality is we can't really do that. And then the I is more for, it reminds me of the Princess Bride, inconceivable, but it's really incomprehensible. It's pretty much the same thing. We just can't make sense of it. We think that there's a way to make sense of everything, but it really is difficult and it's incomprehensible at times. So to create some sort of solidity, some stability, something, we need these 7 C's, and we look to our managers and our leaders to do this. And I think the most effective managers and leaders do this very well. One of the first things that a manager or leader should be doing with their teams and with their organizations is to make sure that they have clarity. People don't want to be confused, right? They're looking to the leader to say, what direction are we going in? And by the way, why? Why are we doing this? So ultimately starting with why, and that's tying to the mission and the reason we're here, and really look for clarity into direction and directionality. Maybe not necessarily telling them exactly what to do because no one wants to be micromanaged, but tell me where we're going. Give me that vision, that clarity of vision, and tell me how much control I have in that certain situation, how much authority I have to make this happen. Then you don't want a leader who's going to be wishy-washy. You don't want them to say one thing one day and then another thing the next day. So you're not going to think of that person as being confident or inspiring confidence or even consistent. So we really need leaders that are not only consistent in what they say, but are also consistent with the organization and what the organization is saying. So all leaders have to be saying the same message. We don't want to be, again, we don't want to create confusion. All people are looking for is that clarity and that consistency, and like, okay, great, now I feel more comfortable. I feel like I can be safe here, right? Because my leader is being clear and is telling me exactly what's going on. And that telling me exactly what's going on is that communication part. Whenever we have employee engagement surveys or employee satisfaction surveys, we always get the same number one complaint. I don't get enough communication, or the communication isn't clear, or they're not telling me what's going on. I want more communication of what's really going on through all the channels. And it needs to be consistent, right? We're going back to that consistency again. Then again, most people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be in an environment where they're collaborative. So they want teamwork. They want to work with other people. So they want to have an environment of collaboration where they are heard. Their voices are heard. They are included. They don't feel like they're being pushed down or not listened to. They were hired for a reason. People are hired for their skill sets, their ideas, their backgrounds, their expertise. They want to be able to contribute that and to be heard and included and not be shut down. So that collaborative environment where that psychological safety can exist is really, really important. And that psychological safety can only exist through compassion. That's the other C. So the compassion, the empathy, the understanding of each individual team member's situation. What's going on? What do you need? Again, how do you want to be rewarded? How, what passions do you have that we can find ways of using those strengths in the workplace? We don't want to disengage you by having you work on things you don't like to do. We want to make sure that you are engaged. And the last thing is, again, not telling people what to do, but coaching them and developing them and growing them through coaching. So those 7 C's are clarity, consistency, confidence, communication, collaboration, compassion, and coaching.
That was great. A great summary and overview. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a few things that came up for me between the clarity, consistency, confidence, and communication. I thought sometimes leaders think they have to have the answers to be able to communicate confidently,
right?
To communicate clearly with clarity. So, and we're reaching an ad break. So when we come back, I want to talk about this sort of idea of like, do you have to have all the answers? What if you don't have all the answers in a sea of uncertainty? What do you do to still be clear, to still communicate, to still be consistent and compassionate and all of these things? But in the world of sort of incomprehensible, uncertainty and all of this stuff. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guests today are Carl Hebenstreit, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello, hello. You're back to the hard skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Carl Hebenstreit. And we've been talking about the 7 C's of explicit expectations from his book, Explicit Expectations. And one of the sort of pitfalls or assumptions that some leaders make when they hear things like, oh, I have to be clear and consistent and communicate effectively, but they're in a world where things are constantly changing, constantly moving. It's hard for them to provide that clear vision, or even like what's happening, every sort of day. Sometimes for them, they can get overwhelmed. How can they still meet these sort of communication best practices in a way that sort of takes in, how difficult it is to just know what you're doing on any given moment?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. It's a huge challenge for leaders nowadays. And the reality is our leaders do not have all the answers. They are tasked and they've been put in this role in order to find the best way of doing things. But as a leader, you don't have to have all the right answers. You just have to have the right people that you're working with to help come up with the answer. If you create this environment, this inclusive environment where people feel psychologically safe, and one of the C's is collaboration. So you will collaborate with people, and one of the other C's is coaching. So coach them, find out what their ideas are. Right? If we were operating just under the golden rule, it would be, I'm the leader, I know everything, I know all the answers. But that's not true. No one can. The only way to know all the answers is to include others, to expand the platinum rule, tap into their skill sets, their knowledge, their ideas, their past experiences, their different worldviews and perspectives that can show you a different way of doing things that, by the way, could be better. And the more diversity we have in our team members and their perspectives and their backgrounds and their experiences and histories, the better solutions and the more innovative solutions will be created. And by the way, by having the team come up with a solution, the team will buy into it far more heavily or more so than if it's being dictated to them, because they've come up with it, they own it. So they feel like they own it. So it's really, it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds simple, but it does take some time to gather those perspectives and to align around, what message we might send given these different perspectives and different areas of expertise that people are bringing, and what, but it's like that old metaphor. You can each be holding one piece of the elephant, or you can come together, describe what you're holding on to here, and actually describe the elephant when you get there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also takes, ego comes into play here too, right? I'm the leader. I need to know. I have the answers. My way is the right way. There's no other way to do it. It's setting aside that part of you and realizing that you cannot do this alone. You will burn yourself out, and you don't have the right answers all the time. You just can't. You are human.
Let's apply that to the confidence one, because a lot of leaders feel like, and it makes sense, that you want to exude a certain level of confidence in you, right?
Yes.
When you do that, though, sometimes it goes in kind of a counter useful, effort where you're either shutting down access to you as a human being, a vulnerable human being
Yes.
who's working through working through it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or you are displaying something you're not, or your ego gets involved, right? As
Yeah.
you said. So, what do you actually mean by confidence, and how you can capitalize on the most effective kind of confidence?
Yeah. So, what I mean by confidence is the ability to step in when necessary, the ability to make a decision when required, the ability to take control of a situation when it's absolutely necessary to do so, and the confidence to exactly what you're talking about earlier, to know that you can be vulnerable. You're so confident that you know that you can show your vulnerability, and that will make you even more powerful and stronger in the eyes of your teams and your organization, because that takes a lot of confidence to show vulnerability and strength to show vulnerability, and it only makes you more confident and stronger. Not confidence in to the extreme of arrogance, right? Definitely not confidence at the extreme of arrogance. It's like, I'm going to show up strong. I'm also going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to be here for my people. I'm going to support them, and I will make the hard decisions when it's necessary to do so. And my people, my team, will know that I have their best interests at heart when I am making these difficult decisions.
Yeah. Another way, as I'm thinking about it, just talking with you, another way to think about confidence is humility.
Yes.
It's and especially for folks who either have a lot of power and privilege,
Mm-hmm.
in an organization, or for folks from a marginalized background,
Mm-hmm.
there's always this like incredibly tenuous line around, like, how do I show up in a way that builds confidence in me as a leader, so that people feel like they can trust me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
but if you're bringing humility to it, and you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, there are some things I know I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people I know who can help provide additional information, who could be part of the team, and it goes back to that collaboration piece that you
Exactly.
mentioned. That's the confidence people are really drawn to, that exudes trust,
Right.
right? Not the sort of like performative confidence.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think all the seven C's together contribute to that. They contribute to the vulnerability and the humility of the leader, who relies and supports the team members to be a stronger unit, as opposed to the strength is all in me. It's not. The strength is in the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of just thinking about how old school models of leadership are all about command and control, and I have all the
Hmm.
answers, single hero
Right.
model,
Hmm.
right? And what
Single point
your
of failure.
single point of failure too, yeah. And what
Yeah.
you're sort of um, reminding us that is that in this day and age, it doesn't work well anymore.
Yeah.
It's a sort of team based leadership,
Yeah.
and leaders who know how to create a thriving environment for everyone to perform at their highest levels together
Hmm.
will be the ones using these seven C's, will be
Hmm.
the ones to best sort of um, lead people through this Bonnie world of
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah. And think of all that stress that is removed from the leader, that now doesn't have to take that all on themselves, about, I need to know everything. I need to have all the answers. I need to be to have the best way of doing things, to now say, let me facilitate this from all of this experience and all of the backgrounds and histories of my teams, to come up with the best possible way. Not no one single person should have to have all that on them, on their shoulders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So going back now to um, these principles of explicit expectations, I would love to
Hmm.
hear um, a client case or example, or a situation that
Hmm.
you saw this happening and or help people work through developing stronger explicit expectation processes around these 7 C's. I'd love to hear kind of like, what does it sound like? What does it look like? What can people imagine themselves doing better?
Yeah. So whenever I do a team building with any organization, with any team, these come into play for sure, because what we're doing is we're approaching it from the standpoint of golden rule. Let me be aware of my own preferences, my own values, my own motivators, and then finding out, oh, wait, there are more. There are others. They're different. So then you find out from your team, or even it may not even be your team, right? So sometimes it's a leadership team and you have your peers there. So they're not necessarily your direct reports, but they're your peers. And then you're finding out that all of your peers have different thinking styles or feeling styles or action styles. And sometimes it's really, really funny when I have a large enough group of like 50 or 60 people and I separate them out into their different motivation styles or feeling styles or whatever. I put them by whatever they are, and people end up sitting next to their best friend at work, and they're like, oh, we have the same style of
Right.
thinking, feeling, and acting.
Yeah.
And I don't get along as well with that other person that's on the other side of the room because we don't. We have totally different ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. And now I'm seeing why I don't quite understand them. But now I see the value in their way of thinking, feeling, and acting. And they're not just doing something to push my hot buttons. This is ultimately really how they're viewing the world and experiencing the world. And by the way, what can I learn from that? So that's always what happens when I do team building exercises with small or even large teams. The big epiphanies come even without introducing a model to show that there are differences in thinking, feeling, and acting, even within this team of colleagues, of equals. And then their minds start going to, okay, now let me think about what's going on with my direct reports. Oh, and also my family. And then they start seeing some of the challenges with the interpersonal dynamics that they're having at home or with their families as well. So in every single, and this is hundreds and hundreds of teams that I've been working with to do this, those are their biggest epiphanies. And whenever they change constellation, whenever they have a new leader, whenever they move into whenever a reorganization or restructure, they bring me back again because they see the value of learning that and understanding that about each other and how they can move forward and be successful without those challenges of this person's out to get me, or this person doesn't understand me, or I don't know why they're thinking like that or doing what they're doing. So it's really eye-opening, and hopefully they're also integrating all of that additional knowledge for themselves, not just working with their people. But even if they are just using it to work with their teammates, that's a win.
That's right. Yeah. So we're reaching another ad break. When we come back, I'd love to hear how these affect the 5 effective leadership practices. You mentioned that in your book. And also talking through kind of a couple of examples of, the most common, let's say, conflicts that you see and how to have an explicit conversation.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Carl Hebenstreit of Explicit Expectations. And we'll be right back in just a moment.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Mira Brancu, and our guests today are Carl Hebenstreit. And we have been talking through some ways to apply his framework to different conflict situations and different sort of styles of how we work and expanding our knowledge and experience and perspectives. And I was thinking through a couple of very specific examples of how explicit expectations might sound. And a couple that came up for me were just thinking about the idea of over communicating. We often, when we communicate, we have the transparency illusion, the bias that we think it's more obvious to everybody than it actually is, that we're more clear than we actually are. And then we get annoyed when people don't get it, don't understand, argue in a way that we have no idea where they came from, right? And so some practical tips around that, would be sort of framing what you're going to say. Hey, I'm going in this direction. I'm going to talk about this because it's important to me because, and if you're confused about, it's probably good if you ask me some questions and then you say your thing and then you check in, right? That's over communicating. And it's more important to over communicate with people you don't have a strong relationship with. If you have been with your spouse for 30 years, you can look at each other and communicate that way. Like there's nothing needs to be said, or you can complete your sentences, but that's not the case with people who are new in your life and are just getting to know you and your style. So that's one thing that came up for me when thinking about how to apply this idea of communication, for example, to being an effective leader. Are there other effective leadership practices that sort of you find that are like really helpful or practical tips that would be helpful for folks?
Yeah, so continuing on with the communication, because that really falls into many different categories, that touches every category of leadership. So if we don't know who our audience is, like they're brand new, you're a brand new leader, you have to address them for the first time, you have no idea what they're interested in or what they're focused on. There is a checklist in the book about make sure you answer these 9 questions and absolutely start with the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important? Why is this related to our mission, or how is it going to help us achieve our goals, right? And there are 9 different things that you can go down. What's the effect and the impact on the people, the stakeholders, our clients, or whatever it is? How is this interesting and unique, and how does it help our brand, our image, our reputation? Why is it logical? Why is it what we should be doing based on what's going on with evidence that we have or research that we've done? What backup plans do we have if things go wrong? How does it help us to grow our vision, to expand and maybe partner with other organizations or whatever? What's within our scope to control, what's within our purview? And then how does this fit the whole system? How does this really help us to thrive as a system and meet every single need that we have? So if you hit those 9 key points, that's going to address what everyone is. Each human being in your audience is going to be interested in at least one of those. Yeah. I saw that masterfully done, by the way, by Samsung last year when they launched their new flagship cell phone. And they addressed all 9 of those. And I was like, good for you.
Wow.
Yes. It was really fascinating.
Seriously, those questions are so good and so important. And I can't tell you how many times I hear leaders start a discussion and it feels like it's halfway through a thought.
Yeah.
And then what happens is everyone is confused and they're either silent, worst case scenario, or they start like asking a billion questions, picking it apart, feeling stressed and frustrated because the leader didn't start with all of that stuff you just described.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you're connecting the dots. You're helping people
Yeah.
connect the dots to all of the big picture, all of the perspective.
Yeah. And how it's going to impact them and the people that they care about. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's those checklist, and that checklist of 9 items can be applied in a variety of different settings for change management, for just normal communication, for you were talking about communicating and it going awry. Delegation is a great example of that. A leader feels, oh, I'm going to delegate this. This is a great learning opportunity for Mira. Here, Mira, do this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do it from my perspective, my golden rule perspective. And the leader is like, no, 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 no. My golden rule perspective is that you would do it this way. There was no communication and no expectation set about what you could do, how far you could take it, how much risk is involved, when is the deadline, what does good look like? By the way, do you understand the concept? And one of the best practices that we talk about in the book is bring that back up. So, Mira, go ahead and type up an email and say, this is what I heard you say. Is this what's expected, what your expectations are? And that gives the leader a chance to say yes, or no, 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 a week earlier and on this one and a week later for that one. And don't include these people on that because that's only they don't need to know that yet, or whatever it is, right? So it's really a way to set those explicit expectations.
Yeah. I love that it's a sort of back and forth. Like it's there's two people involved or more, right? So that's great managing up, like, did I hear right? Is this what you want? Are those your expectations, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of leaders and managers sometimes try so hard to not micromanage that they don't provide you with enough information to know what to do. And then they end up micromanaging later after you've started the work because you haven't had those explicit expectations that you just described.
Exactly. Now, I know earlier you asked about the five requirements or expectations of leaders, and that's not my work. That is attributed to Kouzes and Posner. And those were inspire a shared vision, which comes across with the clarity, the C of clarity. Model the way, show people, be a role model for what's expected. And that's again with clarity and also the consistency and confidence, I would say, that goes along with there. Challenge the process. We could do this better, and actually have people challenge and support your people in challenging the process, because there's a better way to do it. There could be a faster way, a less expensive way, a more meaningful way, something that could expand our horizons even more. Connect with each of your people, get to know each of your people. And that's the empathy. And that's really, again, the only way that you're going to be able to achieve all of your goals in the organization. And then enable others to act, remove the obstacles that are in their way. And again, by connecting with your people, you will be able to find out what those obstacles are, so that you, in your position of authority, may have some ability cross-functionally and across the company to remove some of those obstacles for them.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of these gold nuggets. Oh, no platinum, no rhodium. Rhodium nuggets. What is one thing out of all of the things that you've shared today, which it was a lot of great stuff, what's the one thing that you want people to take away from today?
To be more inclusive, to expand their mindsets and horizons and be open to all of the other experiences and mindsets that are out there, and to integrate them into their own, because only that way will you truly understand what's really going on in the world. You'll be able to see the whole world as opposed to just a 40-degree sliver of it.
Love it. Love it. And where can people find you if they want to learn more?
So they can go to my website, performandfunction.com. They can find me on LinkedIn under R. Carl Hebenstreit. My books are available on Amazon and also through Ingram Spark. And yeah.
Awesome. And for those of you who
are
on your
watching
and on my show, those of you who are watching right now or watching the recording later through video, I have performandfunction.com up so you can see what you'll find there. So much information is available here. And by the way, Carl has an AI bot definitely look that up. I'm just
Or
gonna,
it might
I'm
have
not
been
even.
my A about all the time on the show. You never know.
We're not going to share any more. Go to his website and check it out. Audience, what did you take away from today? And more importantly, what is one small change you can implement this week based on what you learned from Carl? Share it with us on LinkedIn. You'll find us there. You'll find talkradio.nyc there. And Talk Radio is also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, all over the place. So please find the episode there. It'll be posted soon, and help us increase our visibility, reach, and impact by leaving a review. The stuff that I like to talk about on this show is also part of my research-based strategic leadership pathway roadmap that I use to help organizational misfits on their leadership journey. And you can find out more at gotowerscope.com. And thank you, talkradio.nyc, for hosting. Thank you for joining us today, Carl Hebenstreit with Explicit Expectations. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Mira. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Great to have you. Bye.